That's what I've tried to do in my own research, to bring in accurate data to counter the I think mendacious data I've seen. I mean, I keep disparaging this data. Let me just give you one example. When it comes to violence against journalists in India, we all read that more journalists have been killed in India than in any other country outside China. There's no data for China. Well, that sounds awful until you get down into the numbers. If you normalize for the size of population, India has 1.4 billion people. Deaths of journalists in India were 3.5 journalists per billion. Deaths in the rest of the world outside India were 6.3 per billion. So in other words, India is relatively one of the safer places you can be in the world as a journalist. Now, I'm talking to a journalist right now. Every death of a journalist is one death too many. None of us want to see, I mean, all of us want that figure to be 0 deaths of journalists. But when you normalize for population, I saw a similar report, not part of the democracy rankings, regarding Uttar Pradesh and the number of journalist deaths in Uttar Pradesh over the last, I think it is 8 years that Yogi Adityanath has been chief minister, and it sounded horrific. The journalist deaths and attacks on journalists, until you realize that Uttar Pradesh is 205 million people. Compare the violence against journalists in Uttar Pradesh to that against journalists in comparable areas of the world, Nigeria with a similar GDP per capita, or in Indonesia, which has twice the GDP per capita, or more than twice, about 4 times the GDP per capita of Uttar Pradesh. And then the numbers look pretty ordinary, or if not even good. And as a comparative social scientist, this is something I'm always telling people. The number in itself means nothing. We have to have appropriate comparisons. Now, not adjusting for the size of population is a simple trick. And whoever put the numbers out there knew very well that if they adjusted for size of population, India would look safe, not dangerous. And so they chose the statistic that made India look dangerous. My problem with the international rankings organizations is that although they do have to rely on the advice of experts, and they would try to take expert opinions seriously, when they see evidence like this cited, it should immediately throw up a red flag. Why aren't they adjusting for population? It's such an obvious thing to do that any editor should have seen that and pushed back against the figure. The fact that the rankings organizations did not push back against these kind of figures is, I think, evidence of a lapse of judgment. Not evidence of a conspiracy against India, but evidence of an excessive credulity and a lack of responsibility, taking responsibility for their own figures.